as the quote by Jamie Dimon of the Business Roundtable that we've been talking about that says that the shift has happened, moving to the responsibility of corporations to pursue socially responsible agendas rather than to produce a profit and increase value for the stockholders. When you tie that together, that when this discussion is held in political sectors, with almost always, when you hear those terms, socially responsible, in these days, it shouldn't be that way, but it is, it's almost been taken over by the left. That means anti-biblical worldview definition of socially responsible. So not a surprise that that's being hooked together with increased talk that's happening right now in the last couple of weeks. It's been coming out in a much greater fashion about social credit scores that are being implemented through a variety of technological means to either reward or punish citizen behavior based on a big government or anti-Bible definition of what is socially responsible, and why these two areas are actually vaulting ahead with such simultaneous aggressiveness. Now, we're going to do in this segment talk to you a little bit more about what is actually happening in this area and how it's being vaulted forward. Now, one article that I have before me says this: companies in the United States, more specifically Silicon Valley, are building a social credit system for individuals, much like the social credit system communist China is using now, and I'm going to put in here to be implemented fully in 2020. They use it to control its population, and they do it under an authoritarian government control. But what's being done here in the United States is different. What's happening here is being done by corporations as opposed to the government. The article I'm reading from says this: make no mistake, though the corporations building a social credit system in the United States are already another arm of the government. They are lobbying and using the money to get certain politicians elected. This is the very definition of crony corporatism. And then it goes on and it talks about some of these things that are happening. Social credit systems are an end run around the complications of the legal system. What they mean by that is a legal system in place right now that prevents certain things from happening. But unlike China's government policy system, which is being implemented from the top, what's happening here is being enforced by private companies. And if the public objects to how these laws are enforced, it just can't elect the new rule makers because it's not actually being done as a matter of law. Now, William, the connection between Wall Street, big government, big business in regard to pushing a socially responsible agenda, again, as defined by the left, and that's what we're talking, that's very alarming to me. Now, as a certified kingdom advisor, a promoter of BRI, biblically responsible investing, as we do, as you do as a kingdom advisor, and someone who manages wealth for scores of other people, how are you interpreting these changes? Obviously, they seem to be coming on in a more verifiable fashion, more identified of late than for a long time. But again, how do you factor this into BRI investing? And is it's just one more reason why perhaps our listeners ought to be very serious about making sure that their investments are, in fact, complying to a BRI criteria?
Well, Sam, everybody wants to have clean air and clean water. Let's face it. The left often uses that as a mantra against the right, saying that we want companies to dirty the air and pollute the water. The reality of it is that most BRI screens are not going to take into consideration any SRI components to the particular screening that we do when we choose our selection of investments. So there's a difference. There's a worldview, which is a more what I want to say, secular view of what a company should be doing when it comes to socially responsible investing. And then there's a biblically worldview that, unfortunately, very few companies have adopted.
All right. But in your opinion, the discussion we're having today in this move is something that ought to cause all of our listeners to say, all right, there's another reason why I really ought to be making sure that my investments are with a Christian wealth advisor, a biblically worldview directed wealth manager, such as they can find under BRI Investing, because it will help at least to shield and to qualify a lot of these areas we're talking about.
Absolutely. If you're talking to a Kingdom advisor or a certified Kingdom advisor, most likely you're going to be dealing with somebody that should have the software to be able to screen these things out.